I have always overcome great difficulties with great enthusiasm, and I have always succeeded, especially when I was young. But time has changed. On February 18th, just 2 months before my 51st birthday, the unimaginable happened. I had a heart attack. I was on the pool deck, sipping a Corona and waiting for the coals on my smoker to heat up. At first I thought my last gulp of beer had gone down the wrong way, but as the pain worsened I realized something was terribly wrong. The pain was intense and rapidly escalating, as if someone were standing on my chest. I could feel and even hear my heart racing out of control. I collapsed, first to my knees and then onto my back, struggling to breathe. Thank God for cell phones, because that's what saved my life. I reached into my shorts, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. I don't remember if I said help or anything else, but within minutes I heard a loud crash, and a lot of people were suddenly working on me. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew I was in the hospital being told I was about to undergo surgery. "Mr. Moore, can you hear me?" A voice asked. "We need to perform a heart bypass immediately. Do you understand?" I nodded. They put a clipboard under my hand and I signed something, maybe a release form, or perhaps an order for Girl Scout cookies. I had no idea, nor did I care. I just wanted the pain to end. "Is there anyone we should contact?" A nurse asked. My wife, is she here?" I asked. "Number, you were alone when the paramedics arrived." "I'll have someone check on that as soon as possible," she replied. "Now try to relax. We're heading to the operating room and you should be fine." At that moment I think I had a vague idea of what was happening, but nothing was really sinking in as they wheeled me into an elevator, and then into a large, brightly lit room. "Take a deep breath and when you wake up it'll all be over," the doctor assured me. I didn't see my life flash before my eyes. There was no out-of-body experience and thankfully no bright light at the end of a tunnel. I just woke up in the recovery room with a middle-aged nurse standing over me, checking my pulse. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I tried to respond, but my mouth was too dry. My mind was alert, but my body wasn't cooperating. "Don't worry, you'll feel much better in a few hours. Just get some sleep." She was right. The next time I woke up I felt both better and worse at the same time. Sitting next to my bed was Sandy, my wife of 28 years. "Are you all right?" When I got home, the neighbors told me what happened. "The doctor said you're going to be just fine," she said with a smile. My mouth was still dry, so when I tried to speak the words barely came out. "Leave me alone," I started to say, but it was barely a whisper. "What are you trying to say?" Sandy asked, leaning closer to hear. "Get out of my sight and leave me the hell alone," I said loud enough for her to hear this time. "Honey, don't try to talk. Just lie back and rest." "I'll be right here," she said, gently touching my cheek. At that moment my heart rate skyrocketed, my face flushed, and a nurse rushed into my room to see what was happening. "Leave me the hell alone," I yelled at her. "Miss, you need to leave. You're distressing the patient and causing his vitals to spike." "Please leave now," she said to Sandy. "But I'm his wife," Sandy stammered. "Regardless, you're upsetting him, and I need you to leave immediately." "Honey, I'll be in the hallway if you need me," Sandy said, glancing back at me as she was escorted out of the room. I signaled the nurse to come closer. "No visitors, please," I told her, and only discussed my condition with me, no one else. "I understand, Mr. Moore. I'll place a sign on your door indicating no visitors allowed, and I'll ensure the doctor only discusses your condition with you. Is there anything else you need?" she asked. I shook my head no. "In that case, please try to relax and get some rest. The doctor will be in later to check on you. You don't get any rest in a hospital. If they're not poking you, they're drawing blood or trying to give you some damn pill in the middle of the night." "Sleep, yeah right," I thought to myself. The doctor entered and informed me that everything had gone as planned. They had performed a triple bypass, and when they opened me up they found signs of other damage from a previous attack, as they like to call it. I told him it probably happened about 3 months ago, but I had assumed it was just a stress episode. "You're very lucky, Mr. Moore. If you hadn't had your cell phone, you might not have made it," he explained. "You really need to get your weight and blood pressure under control, or you'll end up seeing me again," he added while reviewing my chart. "I want you out of bed tomorrow morning. You need to start walking at least 10 minutes every hour and we'll take it from there. How long will I be laid up, Doc? If you're asking when you can go back to work, it'll be at least 2 months. When you go home, you'll need someone with you at all times, at least for the first couple of weeks. After that, we'll see how you're doing. Doc, I won't be recovering at home, so can you recommend a good facility? Well, there's a decent one about 3 miles from here with a great workout area and a dietitian on staff, he said. Just have our business office arrange it for you. But I should warn you it's a bit expensive, though it has an excellent reputation. By the way, you've had a lot of visitors, and some of them got pretty upset when they were told you didn't want any visitors or calls, he said with a puzzled smile. I suppose you have your reasons, but I wouldn't want to be in your shoes when you go home, he remarked as he walked out the door. Who said I was going home, I thought. A week later, I found myself in a private room at the rehabilitation center. The room overlooked an outdoor pond and felt more like a hotel suite than a hospital room. After a thorough physical examination, I was asked how long I intended to stay. Let's plan for 2 months and reassess after that, I told the coordinator. Mr. Wilson, you're about 65 pounds above your ideal weight and not in the best physical condition. We need to get you into the gym and establish an exercise routine. But first, we're going to set you up with a solid nutritional program to help bring your weight down. It won't be easy, but if you follow the staff's guidance, you'll see progress. With that in mind, let me take you to the gym so you can get started. Well, you've got me for the next 2 months, so do whatever you think is best, I said with a laugh as we began putting a recovery plan in motion. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. The reason is simple, I'm really good at what I do for a living. I'm not saying that to brag or boost my ego, it's just a fact. I have a talent for finding the right people for the job, ensuring they're well trained, and then letting them do what they were hired to do. I learned a long time ago that I couldn't do it all myself. I tried for a while, but it nearly killed me. Now I delegate and let others handle their responsibilities. I assign them a project, explain the client's expectations, and then step back to let them excel. Life is good now. You see, I'm the sales manager for a marketing firm. I've been with the company for 26 years, and a couple of years ago I became a silent partner. No one, and I mean no one, not even my wife, knows this. 5 years ago, I took a 25% pay cut to buy into the company. I've got 5 more years to go and I'll be a 50% owner alongside my buddy Ken. Sounds like I've got it all figured out, right? Well, I do when it comes to my business life, but my personal life is a different story. I have 2 spoiled kids and a social climbing wife. My youngest John barely made it through college and was more than a little upset when I didn't offer him a job at the company. I told him family and business don't mix, but between us I didn't want to be the one to fire him when his laziness caught up with him. He did find a nice girl and got married, but he still asks me for money every other month. I suppose I never learned to say no to him, but that's about to change. Tina, who's 2 years older than John, is a perpetual student. I think she's on the 6-year graduation plan. She's changed her major 3 times and I have no idea what it is now, but it doesn't matter. At the start of this school year I told her she had 1 semester left to finish, and after that she's on her own. She went to her mother to complain, and when Sandy brought it up to me I told her enough was enough. You get where I'm going with this, don't you? I'm done being the nice guy with an open checkbook. At 25 and 27 years old, I shouldn't have to support them anymore, and I'm not going to. They're officially off my payroll. As for my wife, Sandy, that's a different story. About 3 months ago, I was feeling a bit frisky one evening. Our intimacy life had diminished significantly over the past year, and I was trying to rekindle it to where it should be. I'm not asking for intimacy 5 times a week, but 3 times would be nice. So where was I? Oh yes, after dinner, I offered her a glass of wine and asked if she was in the mood. For what? You know, how about we head upstairs and have a little fun, I said with my most enticing smile. I'm a bit tired tonight and I have that party to plan for, was her response. Come on, hon, it's not like I'm asking for a kidney, just a bit of affection. I should have realized that things weren't going to go as planned when Sandy seemed to be full of enthusiasm, like a person sitting in a dentist's chair waiting for a root canal to be removed. We went to bed to have some fun, but that's when the complaints started. I was taking up too much space, she was too hot, I was sweating, she was outraged all the time. I couldn't stand it and stopped everything. Where are you going, she asked, to take care of myself alone so that I no longer have to listen to you complain about how unpleasant it is to be around me, I replied, slamming the door behind me. I handled the situation on my own, and as soon as I finished, I went to our spare bedroom. Where are you going now? She called after me. Away from you until I say something I'll regret later, I replied, slamming the door again. She was right, I've gained a lot of weight in the last few years. I probably should have taken better care of myself, but I've become complacent. I started playing golf mainly to attract new customers, but I didn't really like it and I wasn't very good at it. The only advantage of joining a country club was the constant variety of activities. The next morning I left long before Sandy woke up. I was still upset, although I calmed down a bit. I guess it wasn't just her fault, I muttered to myself, sitting at my desk and eating a donut, followed by a second cup of coffee. Around 10 a.m., I received an email from Sandy from work. There was no apology, no expression of love, just a message explaining that she wasn't in the mood last night and that instead of talking to her about it, I left in a rage. I put down my coffee and tried to remember the last time we had what I would call a full-fledged intimate experience. Lately it was just a routine, she didn't show any initiative. The relationship really went downhill, and it seems Sandy preferred to avoid intimacy rather than engage in it with me. That's when it hit me. Maybe she's meeting her needs elsewhere. I decided to face the truth and see what happens. What could happen in the worst case? Will she leave me? I replied with the following letter. Whatever you are doing, whoever you are with, you better stop right now if you want to stay married to me. As soon as I clicked send, I realized that I would provoke some kind of reaction, but I hoped that she would at least wait until I got home to respond. Sandy sent me a scathing email, berating me for daring to accuse her of cheating. She claimed that I was the issue with our intimate life, not her. She mocked me for getting winded from just climbing 2 flights of stairs, suggesting that perhaps she should get an oxygen tank for our bedroom on nights when I wanted intimacy. These were among the more benign remarks she made. Her final comment was that I should move to the guest room permanently so she wouldn't be held responsible if I had a heart attack. My reply was brief and straightforward. So be it. That night I didn't go home for dinner. Instead, I ate with my partner, Ken. I considered not going home at all but decided against it, thinking it might make things worse. Sandy was waiting for me when I walked through the door. How dare you accuse me of cheating, she yelled. I have never been unfaithful throughout our marriage. Well, if you're not getting it from me anymore, you must be getting it elsewhere, I retorted, standing my ground. I'm tired, and since all you're going to do is yell, I'm going to bed. So I guess you're not sleeping in our bedroom anymore, she said sarcastically. What's the point? You don't want me there and I don't go where I'm not wanted, I replied as I climbed the stairs. Sleep by yourself. See if I care, Sandy screamed after me. It was then that I first felt a sharp pain in my chest. Each step was excruciating, but I pressed on. I barely made it to the top of the stairs before I had to brace myself against the wall to avoid collapsing. I reached the spare room, fell onto the bed fully clothed and passed out. When I finally woke up and checked my watch, I saw it was already 2:30 p.m. I can't let her get to me like that, I muttered to myself as I headed to the bathroom. I splashed water on my face and stared into the mirror, displeased with what I saw. I need to pull myself together, I said, stripping off my sweat-soaked clothes. The next morning I slept in until nearly 9 a.m. The house was quiet since Sandy had already left. I called work to request a vacation day, and decided to visit my doctor instead of staying home. You need to lose at least 50 pounds, he said, and your blood pressure is dangerously high. I'm going to prescribe something to lower it, but if you don't start taking better care of yourself, you're heading for serious problems, he warned. I'd heard this before, especially over the past 2 years. I had tried dieting, but it just wasn't something I enjoyed, so I didn't stick with it. I told him I'd attempt to lose some weight and take the medication. He scheduled a follow-up appointment for 3 months later, and I left with a calorie chart and 2 diet plans. I tossed them onto the back seat of the car. Things around the house grew cold at best. We stopped eating together and only communicated when absolutely necessary. By the end of our 2nd month of silence, we began speaking again, though there were no apologies. Our conversations were limited to trivial topics or about the kids. Saturday marked the annual charity auction at the club. Steve, are you going? Sandy asked. Yes, I'll be there, I responded. Then we might as well go together. Is your tux ready? She inquired, cleaned, pressed, and ready to go. The ride to the club was quiet. We exchanged small talk until I decided to address the issue. I'm sorry, I said, keeping my eyes on the road. I am too, Sandy replied. I've missed you and don't want to fight anymore. That was all the time we had before we arrived at the club. I handed my keys to the valet and received the claim ticket in return. I then walked around to open Sandy's door and offered her my hand. She took it with a smile, making my heart race. We entered the dining room and found our table. Dinner was fine, but the wine was exceptional. I had ordered 4 bottles for our table, and with the other 3 couples we toasted to our good health. After dinner the band started playing and people began dancing. I danced one slow dance with Sandy, which was more than enough for me. She asked if it was okay to dance with a few other men. No problem, I told her. I was walking around the room catching up with a few friends, when I noticed Sandy on the dance floor. They were dancing slowly, and the man with her was unfamiliar to me. His hand started at her waist, but gradually moved down until it was resting on her backside. After a couple of dances, they stepped outside to the moonlit patio, and I followed, keeping a low profile. They were too far for me to hear their conversation, but their body language was unmistakable. When he leaned in and kissed her, I'd seen enough. Not staying for the auction? Asked the parking lot attendant. There's nothing in there I want anymore, I replied as I got into my car and drove away. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Guess who? I turned it off and set it on the seat beside me. I had been home for about 2 hours when Sandy burst in. What the hell is your problem? Why did you just leave me like that? She shouted. I thought you two wanted to be alone, I said. What are you talking about, Steve? The dark-haired man, the patio, the kiss. I saw everything, I told her. That was nothing, she retorted. Nothing? Are you saying a man kissing my wife is nothing? I beg to differ, Sandy. And I suppose you've made it a habit to let men grope you while you dance with them? Everyone saw what happened on the dance floor. Or was I just imagining it? I asked. It's not what it looked like, Steve. I should have asked Rick to move his hand. But it was just innocent flirting, she explained. And the kiss was just a thank you for dancing with him. I went to look for you right after that. And it took you 2 hours to get back home. Since you weren't answering your phone, I had to find someone to give me a ride. Let me guess. Rick just happened to offer you a ride. Am I right? Yes, it was Rick. And no, nothing happened, she tried to reassure me as I started to walk away. Damn it. Nothing happened, Steve, she repeated. How long has it been, I asked. How long has it been? How long ago did you give up on us, I said, heading toward my new and permanent room. God damn it, Steve, I didn't do anything, she yelled as she started to cry. I guess it was right after I gave up on myself, I replied before closing and locking the bedroom door. I stayed in the bedroom all day Sunday. I slept in and spent a lot of time reflecting on how my life had turned out. I had 2 ungrateful kids who only contacted me when they needed something, and a wife with whom I was merely cohabitating, more like a sister. I needed to get away for a few days. Our lake cabin was about an hour's drive from home. It had originally belonged to my parents, and after they passed away, I bought out my brother's share and renovated the interior. On Monday, I packed a few things and headed out there. A quick call to work and I was free for the next 4 days. I just needed some time alone to sort through things without Sandy constantly around. When I opened the door, I immediately knew something was off. I hadn't been there in at least 4 months, and when I left, the place was spotless. Someone had been there since then. An empty wine bottle was on the counter, and a quick check revealed that our bed had been used. Not just used, but someone had clearly had intimacy on it. There was a ring on the white sheets where the wet spot had been. Well, I now know where and with whom. I muttered to myself as I dragged the mattress outside and threw it onto the lawn. My heart raced and I was drenched in sweat as I sat down in a chair on the porch. Steve, old buddy, it looks like you've been replaced, I said angrily. Forget them all. I don't need them anymore. I used to, but not anymore. Over the next 4 days I made a list of what I wanted from life and where I wanted to go, none of which included any of my family. It was like a bucket list but without the need to kick the bucket. I got home late Friday afternoon, but Sandy was nowhere to be found. She didn't come home that night, so by Saturday afternoon, I decided to smoke a rack or two of ribs and wait for her. I was almost eager to hear her explanation for her absence over the past 2 days when everything came crashing down and I had a heart attack. So this brings us to where I am now. I finally reached out to Ken from the rehab facility to let him know I'm still alive and kicking. They wouldn't connect your calls, he said. How are you feeling? Better, but still quite weak. It looks like I'll be laid up for a few months. I need Judy to bring my laptop so I can stay in touch and keep up with things. Do you think that's a good idea? Ken asked. Don't worry, I won't overdo it. Between Judy and me, we'll keep everything up to date, I assured him. By the way, your wife was here the other day. She took something off your desk. I think it was that photo of the two of you. Is everything all right? He inquired. Better than ever. Just have Judy drop off my laptop and for heaven's sake, don't let anyone know where I am. I really don't need any visitors, I told him. And by the way, I'm taking full advantage of our health insurance, I added with a laugh. That's what it's there for, just focus on getting better and let me know if you need anything, buddy. Those bastards, I muttered after the second week. First, they pushed me to my limits in the gym, and now they were feeding me barely enough to survive. I've seen bigger appetizers, I said to myself, staring at my dinner plate. I was working out 4 times a day and eating meals barely enough for a baby, but I was losing weight. After about 5.5 weeks, I was less irritable and started to find my rhythm. The food was terrible and never enough, but I liked the changes happening to me. I could walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes without oxygen. My pants were loose around my waist and for the first time in a long while, I began to feel better about myself. Damn it, I can do this, I told myself. As the Goodwill truck pulled into the driveway, Sandy initially thought they were just using it to turn around. Mrs. Moore, the driver, inquired. Yes, I'm Mrs. Moore, she replied. I have a pickup order here and was instructed to get in touch with you, he explained. A pickup order? I didn't request one, she said, puzzled. I understand, miss. It was arranged by your husband, Steve Moore, he said, showing her his signature at the bottom of the page. It indicates that we're to collect every item of clothing in the house that belongs to your husband. The note mentioned that the items aren't already packed, so if you wouldn't mind showing me where they are, we can start. We have another pickup scheduled for this afternoon. She led them to Steve's closet and dresser in their bedroom, then took one of the workers downstairs to where his winter clothes were kept. It took them just under an hour to pack everything up and load it onto the truck. She signed their receipt and received her copy before they left. What on earth is he doing? She wondered to herself. After the incident in his room, I wasn't allowed to see or speak with Steve while he was in the hospital. The doctor refused to provide any information about his condition or when he would be discharged. I became very worried when Steve refused to see John or Tina. I understood that he was angry with me, but that didn't justify avoiding his children. On Tuesday, I sneaked into the hospital and made my way up the stairs to his floor. I was determined not to let that nurse stop me again. I waited until she was at the other end of the hall and then dashed into Steve's room. Bursting through the door, I yelled, "Why won't you talk to me?" A confused woman looked at me and said, "I don't know you," as she tried to understand what this frantic woman was doing in her room. "All right, where have you taken Steve Moore?" I demanded of the nurse at the front desk. "I'm sorry, but he's gone," she replied. Tears welled up in my eyes. "When? How?" I asked. "What did they do with his body?" I sobbed. "I'm his wife. I have a right to know," I said, my anger rising through my tears. "When I said he's gone, I meant he was discharged 2 days ago. For more information, you'll need to visit the office. I have a floor full of patients to attend to," she explained. The business office informed me that Steve had been discharged and sent to a rehab clinic, but they couldn't tell me where due to patient privacy. Great, back to square one, I muttered to myself as I left the building. Sitting in my car, I contemplated my next steps. Steve was right, I had long given up on us. His weight had ballooned and whenever I mentioned it he accused me of nagging. Our intimate moments were no longer enjoyable. He was like a heavy sack lying on top of me. When I complained that he was crushing me, he would get upset and try to shift his weight onto his arms or elbows. At that point, I was just relieved when he finished and got off me. The thought of intimacy with him now made me anxious. We did this about once a month, and usually after he complained for a day or two. You could call it intimacy out of pity. I was getting more and more upset, and that's when Rick showed up. I first met Rick when we came to the country club. They had a monthly dinner and dance, and he always came to them alone. During these events, he danced with all the women. Meanwhile, Steve would go out to drink or eat, and Rick and I would dance together all night. It's been ages since someone hugged me like that. Eventually we danced a few songs in a row and then sat.